Her mother's words were just a whisper, but they hit Elara like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. "Elara, you must marry him. It's the only way to save us." Elara looked from her mother's tear-streaked face to her father's defeated slump. And the him she was supposed to marry? He was a ghost, a name without a face, a billionaire shrouded in rumor and power. The weight of their desperation settled onto her shoulders, heavy and suffocating. In that moment, the simple life she loved, the smell of wildflowers, the familiar sound of the village bells, the warmth of the sun on her family's farm, it all started to unravel. She wasn't just Elara anymore, the girl who dreamed of opening a small flower shop. She was a sacrifice. A daughter about to be sold. The days that followed were a complete blur of hushed arguments, frantic arrangements, and a sorrow so deep it felt like a winter frost had permanently settled in her heart, chilling every breath she took and every thought that crossed her mind. Her family's farm, which had been in their name for generations, stretching back to times when such lands were passed down like sacred heirlooms in rural communities much like those in historical eras of agrarian hardship. Think of the smallholder farmers in 19th century Europe or colonial outposts, where debt could swallow entire lineages, was drowning in debt. A string of bad harvests, each one more disappointing than the last, with fields that yielded withered crops under unrelenting suns or flooding rains, and her father's failing health, his once strong hands now trembling as he tried to till the soil, had brought them to the brink of utter ruin. The soil itself seemed to mourn, cracking under the weight of their misfortune, and the air carried the faint, bitter scent of decay from the failed yields. Elara would walk those fields in the early mornings, the dew soaking her simple skirts, feeling the earth cling to her as if begging her not to leave, and she'd whisper quiet prayers to whatever forces might listen, hoping for a miracle that never came. The only hand offered to pull them back from this abyss was from Damien Sterling, a man so wealthy he was more myth than human, a titan of industry living in a world of glass towers and cold transactions, much like the industrial barons of the Gilded Age who built empires on steel and ambition, amassing fortunes that dwarfed the lives of ordinary folk. And the price for his help wasn't money, not in the straightforward sense of coins exchanged, or loans signed with familiar village lenders. It was marriage, a union that echoed the arranged pacts of historical times, where women were often bartered for alliances or economic stability, their futures tied to the whims of powerful men in distant cities. He needed a wife, and for reasons nobody could figure out, whispers in the village suggested it was for tax benefits, or to quell some scandal in his glittering world. But no one knew for sure. He had chosen her. A girl he never even met, from a village that was just a speck on the maps of his empire. A place where life moved to the rhythm of seasons and sunrises, not boardroom deals and stock tickers. Elara spent those final days in a haze, packing her few belongings into a worn leather satchel, her brother's wooden bird carving, a handful of pressed wildflowers from the fields, a faded photograph of her family laughing under the old oak tree, and saying tearful goodbyes to neighbors who clucked their tongues in sympathy, their faces lined with the same hardships that had plagued generations. The air in the village home grew thick with unspoken regrets, the scent of her mother's herbal tea, a blend of chamomile and lavender meant to soothe nerves, lingering as a faint comfort amid the chaos. The wedding day arrived under a gray, overcast sky that seemed to mirror the heaviness in Elara's chest, the clouds hanging low like a shroud over what should have been a day of joy but felt instead like a somber rite of passage, reminiscent of historical weddings in times of economic desperation, where unions were forged not from love but from necessity. There was no white dress, no joyful gathering of friends and family with feasts of home-baked bread and fresh-picked fruits. No laughter echoing through the village square as in the old tales her grandmother used to tell of simpler, happier betrothals. It was a sterile transaction, held in a cold, impersonal city office that smelled of old paper and indifference, the kind of place where lives were altered with the stroke of a pen, much like the bureaucratic halls of past centuries where marriages were recorded in dusty ledgers to secure lands or debts. Elara wore a simple blue dress, the nicest thing she owned, its fabric soft from years of wear, but she felt as out of place as a wildflower in a science lab, its petals wilting under artificial lights. The room was stark, with fluorescent bulbs buzzing faintly overhead, casting harsh shadows on the plain wooden table where the registrar sat, his voice monotonous as he recited the legal formalities, each word landing like a stone in her stomach. And then she saw him. Damien Sterling. He was taller than she'd imagined, his frame imposing yet elegant, like the statues of ancient conquerors she'd read about in borrowed books from the village school, and his presence seemed to suck all the air out of the room, leaving it charged with an unspoken power. His suit was perfect, tailored from fabrics that whispered of luxury she could scarcely comprehend, his face a mask of sharp angles and cold indifference, etched with the lines of a man who had built an empire from nothing, perhaps drawing from the same ruthless ambition as historical figures like John D. Rockefeller, who rose from modest beginnings to command vast fortunes. There was zero warmth in his eyes, just the hard gleam of a man who always gets exactly what he wants, his gaze assessing her not as a person but as a clause in a contract. He didn't smile. He barely even looked at her, his attention flicking briefly over her form before returning to the papers in his hand, as if this were just another acquisition in his portfolio of deals. "Miss Elara." His voice was deep, but held no emotion, resonating in the small room like a distant echo, carrying the weight of authority honed in boardrooms where fortunes were made and broken. He slid a thick folder of papers across the polished table, the sound of it scraping against the wood amplifying in the silence. "Our agreement. It outlines the terms of our one-year contract. You will perform the duties of a wife in public, attending events, smiling for cameras, maintaining the facade of unity. In private, we will lead separate lives, with no expectations of intimacy or shared routines. At the end of 1 year, you'll be free to leave, and your family's debt will be considered paid in full, wiped clean as if it never existed. Do you understand?" His words were precise, each one measured, leaving no room for negotiation or warmth, much like the ironclad contracts of industrial tycoons in history who bound lives to their visions with unyielding terms. She could only nod, her throat too tight to speak, the lump there feeling like a stone she couldn't swallow, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the table for support. She wasn't a bride, she was an employee signing a contract, her signature a reluctant scrawl that sealed her fate, the pen's ink bleeding slightly on the page as if mirroring her inner turmoil. A business deal where she was the main asset, traded like commodities in historical markets where women's roles were often reduced to such exchanges for family survival. The ceremony was a blur, the registrar's words a meaningless drone that washed over her like a fog, each syllable blending into the next until it was done, the official stamp thudding down like a final judgment. When he was told he could kiss the bride, Damien just gave a stiff, tiny nod, a clear dismissal that stung like a slap, his eyes flicking away as if the very idea was beneath him. The humiliation burned on Elara's cheeks, hot and unrelenting, a flush she couldn't hide in the sterile light of the office. The drive to his home was dead silent, the luxury car's engine a low hum that did nothing to fill the void between them, the leather seats cool against her skin as she stared out the tinted window, watching the world blur by. Elara stared out the window as the familiar, humble streets of her world, the dirt roads lined with wildflowers, the thatched roofs of neighboring farms, the distant calls of birds she knew by name, were replaced by a city of impossible buildings and staggering wealth, skyscrapers piercing the sky like arrogant fingers, their glass facades reflecting a life she had only glimpsed in magazines borrowed from the village library. The air inside the car was scented with polished leather and a faint, expensive cologne that clung to Damien, a reminder of the chasm between their worlds. They pulled up to a gate that looked more like a fortress wall, wrought iron twisted into intricate patterns that spoke of old money and exclusion, guarded by unseen eyes. It slid open with a mechanical whir, revealing a long driveway that snaked through a forest of manicured trees, their leaves rustling softly in the breeze, before opening up to a mansion. It wasn't a house. It was a monument of glass, steel, and stone, a cold, beautiful beast of a building that stared down at the world from its perch on a hill, its architecture echoing the grand estates of historical magnates who built palaces to display their dominance over nature and society alike. A uniformed butler opened her door with a polite bow, his gloved hands efficient and impersonal, the crisp fabric of his uniform a stark contrast to the simple clothes Elara wore. Damien was already walking toward the entrance, his strides long and purposeful, not even glancing back to see if she was following, his shadow stretching long in the fading light. "Her bags go to the east wing," he ordered the staff, his voice echoing in the massive marble foyer, the words bouncing off walls adorned with priceless art that seemed to watch her with judgmental eyes. "Show her to her room." The staff moved like well-oiled machines, their faces neutral, trained in the art of discretion that came with serving the ultra-wealthy, a tradition as old as the servant classes in historical manors where loyalty was bought with silence. And just like that, he was gone, disappearing up a sweeping staircase without another word, his footsteps fading into the vastness of the house, leaving Elara to wonder if she'd imagined the brief flicker of something. Regret? Indifference, in his eyes. Elara was left standing alone in the giant hall, surrounded by strangers in her new husband's house, the air heavy with the scent of polished wood and fresh flowers arranged in vases that cost more than her family's annual harvest. Her room in the East Wing was bigger than her entire family home, its high ceilings making her feel small and insignificant, the space filled with luxuries she hadn't asked for, a four-poster bed draped in silks, windows that framed the city like a painting, and a chandelier that sparkled like captured stars. It had a balcony with a stunning view of the city lights, twinkling far below like a sea of distant fireflies, a bathroom carved from white marble that gleamed under soft lighting, its fixtures gold-plated and echoing with the drip of a faucet she didn't know how to silence, and a closet already filled with designer clothes she'd only seen in magazines, their fabrics whispering promises of a life she didn't want. It was a gilded cage, and the loneliness was its most opulent feature, wrapping around her like an invisible shroud, making every breath feel heavier, every moment stretch into eternity. That night, Elara didn't sleep in the luxurious bed, its pillows too soft and foreign, its sheets smelling of unfamiliar detergents. She curled up on a small armchair by the window, pulling her simple village shawl around her, the rough wool a comforting reminder of home, its threads woven by her mother's hands during long winter evenings. Watching the distant, glittering lights of the city, she felt a loneliness so profound it hurt, a deep ache that settled in her chest like a stone, memories of her family's warm hearth flickering in her mind like dying embers. She had saved her family, pulling them from the brink with this sacrifice, but she had completely lost herself in the process, her identity dissolving into the shadows of this vast, empty place. The unexpected wedding had happened, and the shock wasn't the nation's, not yet, it was hers, a silent earthquake that had shattered her world into fragments she wasn't sure she could ever piece back together, leaving her to wonder, in the quiet hours before dawn, if she would ever find her way back to the girl she once was. The first few weeks in the Sterling mansion were an exercise in staying invisible, a delicate dance of shadows and silence where Elara learned to navigate the sprawling corridors like a ghost haunting her own life, her footsteps muffled on the thick carpets that absorbed sound like secrets. She learned the layout of her gilded prison, figuring out the quietest paths she could take to avoid everyone, the back stairwells that wound like forgotten passages in historical castles, the side doors that led to hidden gardens where she could breathe without eyes upon her. She ate her meals alone in her wing, served by staff who were polite but distant, their eyes a mix of pity and professionalism, trays arriving with silver domes that lifted to reveal foods she had never tasted, exotic fruits and delicate pastries that tasted like ash in her mouth amid her isolation. Damien was a ghost in his own home. His presence felt more in absence than in person, like the elusive figures of historical tycoons who ruled from afar, their empires humming without their constant oversight. She'd sometimes hear the rumble of his sports car leaving before dawn, the engine's growl fading into the morning mist, or returning late at night, headlights cutting through the darkness like accusatory beams. But she almost never saw him, their paths crossing only in fleeting glimpses that left her more alone than before. Their entire existence was governed by the cold silence of their contract, a document that hung over them like an unspoken law, dictating boundaries as rigidly as the class divides in bygone eras where marriages were tools of power rather than affection. But the real chill didn't come from her phantom husband, whose absence was a mercy in its way, allowing her space to grieve in private. It came from his mother, Beatrice Sterling, a woman whose presence was as pervasive as a winter fog, seeping into every corner of the mansion with her judgments and expectations. Beatrice was a woman sculpted from ice, her elegance matched only by her open disdain, her silver hair pinned in a style that evoked the stern matriarchs of Victorian high society, where women wielded influence like weapons in drawing rooms. When they first met, in the grand parlor with its velvet drapes and crystal decanters, she looked Elara up and down as if she were an ugly piece of furniture delivered by mistake, her lips curling in a way that made Elara's skin prickle. "So you're the girl," Beatrice had said, her eyes raking over Elara's simple cotton dress, the fabric faded from washes in the village stream, the pause in her words intentional, the word girl dripping with condescension like venom from a serpent's fang. "My son has his eccentricities, but this is a new low. Tell me, what could a girl from a place with more cows than people possibly offer the sterling name? Your hands are rough from labor, your manners unrefined. Do you even know which fork to use at a formal dinner?" Elara felt her face burn, the heat rising like a flush of shame, but she held the older woman's gaze, drawing on the quiet strength that had seen her through village hardships, much like the resilient women in historical tales who faced down societal scorn to forge their paths. "My family needed help, Mrs. Sterling. Your son offered it," Elara replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her heart, the words echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. "Offered it?" Beatrice let out a short, sharp laugh that cut through the air like a knife, her jewelry clinking as she gestured dismissively. "My dear, Damien doesn't offer. He acquires. And he has acquired you, like one might pick up a trinket from a market stall. Remember your place. You're a temporary fixture, a bandage on a problem I don't fully understand yet. Don't get comfortable. This world will spit you out as quickly as it swallowed you." The words lingered, heavy and cutting, a reminder of the class barriers that had persisted through history, where outsiders were tolerated but never truly welcomed. Beatrice's cruelty was usually paired with the sugary venom of Isabella Croft, a woman whose beauty was as calculated as a historical courtesan's, designed to captivate and control. Isabella was everything Elara wasn't, impossibly chic, dripping with jewels and an air of pure entitlement, her gowns flowing like silk rivers, her laughter a practiced melody that masked deeper intentions. She was introduced as a lifelong family friend during a tense afternoon tea in the sunroom where light filtered through stained glass, casting colorful patterns on the floor. But the possessive way she looked at Damien, her eyes lingering on him like a claim, and the scornful glances she shot Elara told a very different story, one of rivalry and unspoken desires that echoed the intrigues of royal courts and history books Elara had pored over as a child. "Oh, you must be Damien's little charity project," Isabella chirped when they met, her smile as bright and fake as the diamonds on her wrist, the words delivered with a lilt that made them sound almost kind, though the sting was unmistakable. How quaint. He always did have a soft spot for strays, picking up lost causes like one might rescue a kitten from the rain. "But tell me, how are you adjusting to all this?" Her eyes flicked over Elara's attire, a silent judgment that made Elara wish she could disappear into the patterned rug beneath her feet. Their first team attack was disguised as kindness, a calculated ambush that unfolded in the sitting room one afternoon, the space filled with the scent of blooming orchids from the conservatory, and the faint tick of an antique clock marking time like a heartbeat. Beatrice and Isabella cornered Elara there, their perfumes mingling into a cloying cloud, as she sat reading a book from the vast library, a worn volume on botanical history, a small comfort reminding her of home. "Darling, we simply can't have you walking around in that," Isabella said, gesturing vaguely at Elara's dress with a manicured hand, her nails painted a deep crimson that matched her lips. "We've called a stylist. It's time to shed that village skin and look the part of Mrs. Sterling, even if it's just in name. After all, appearances matter in our world. Think of the historical debutantes who were molded into perfection to secure their places in society." The words were laced with false concern, but Elara sensed the trap, the way they circled her like predators in a historical hunt, their eyes gleaming with anticipation. They marched her into a room where racks of designer clothes stood like a silent, mocking army, the fabrics shimmering under the chandelier light, each piece a testament to a life of excess she had never desired. The stylist, a nervous man with a tape measure dangling from his neck, was clearly taking orders from Beatrice, his hands fluttering as he selected outfits under her watchful eye. They forced her into dresses that felt like costumes, tight bodices that restricted her breath, skirts that swished unnaturally, and shoes that felt like torture, heels that pinched and wobbled, making her long for the bare earth of her village paths. They caked on makeup that erased every trace of the girl she was, layering foundations and shadows until she looked like a painted mask, her reflection in the full-length mirror a stranger with hollow eyes. Beatrice circled her like a sculptor assessing a flawed statue, adjusting a hem here, a necklace there, her touch cold and impersonal. "There," Beatrice said with a thin, satisfied smile that didn't reach her eyes, stepping back to admire their work. "Now one can almost believe you belong here, though it's a stretch. Remember, this is temporary, like the fleeting alliances in history where outsiders were dressed up but never truly integrated." Elara stared at her reflection, feeling the weight of the fabrics like chains, the makeup a barrier between her and the world, and in that moment, a spark of defiance ignited deep within her, a quiet resolve to endure but not surrender. Later that night, alone in her room with the city lights mocking her from the balcony, she ripped off the suffocating dress, the zipper's rasp echoing her frustration, and scrubbed the makeup from her face with vigorous strokes, the water in the marble sink turning murky with the remnants of their imposition. She put her own simple clothes back on, the cotton soft and familiar against her skin, a tactile reminder of who she was beneath the facade. It was a small rebellion, but it was hers, a way of holding on to the last piece of herself in this labyrinth of luxury, much like the quiet acts of resistance by women in historical narratives who preserved their identities amid oppressive surroundings. The first big public test was a charity gala, the biggest event on the city's social calendar, a glittering affair held in a grand ballroom that evoked the opulent parties of the Roaring Twenties, where the elite gathered to see and be seen. The second she stepped out of the car with Damien, the flashbulbs were blinding, popping like fireworks that left spots in her vision, the red carpet underfoot a plush path leading to a world of scrutiny. For the first time, He was actually playing the part of her husband, his hand resting on the small of her back, a gesture that felt both shockingly intimate and completely impersonal, his touch firm but devoid of warmth, guiding her as one might steer a valuable asset. He guided her through the sea of faces, his own expression impossible to read, a mask honed from years of high-stakes negotiations, much like the stoic facades of historical leaders navigating court intrigues. "Smile," he murmured, his voice low and commanding, close enough that she could feel his breath on her ear, a rare proximity that sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. "You're my wife. Act like it. The world is watching, and in this game, perception is everything." She tried, forcing her lips into a curve that felt unnatural, but the glittering smiles from the other guests felt like bared teeth, predatory and insincere. She could hear the whispers, feel their judgmental stares piercing through the crowd, snippets of conversation floating like smoke. "Is that her? The village girl? What does he even see in her? She looks so out of place, like a peasant at a royal ball." Isabella, stunning in a blood-red gown that hugged her figure like a second skin, its fabric shimmering under the chandeliers, saw her chance amid the swirl of gowns and tuxedos. She cornered Elara by the champagne fountain, the bubbles in the glasses fizzing softly, a mocking effervescence against the tension. "You look so lost, darling," she cooed, just loud enough for people nearby to hear, her voice sweet but laced with malice, her perfume overwhelming in the closed space. "It must be overwhelming. These are people of substance, of lineage, not farmers. However do you manage? Do tell me your secret. Perhaps it's that rustic charm that Damien finds so amusing." The insult just hung there in the air, thick and tangible, drawing subtle nods from onlookers who pretended not to listen but leaned in closer. Elara felt a dozen pairs of eyes on her, waiting to see her crumble, the weight of their expectations pressing down like the heavy air before a storm. She took a deep breath, tasting expensive perfume and her own fear, the champagne flute in her hand suddenly feeling like a fragile shield. Before she could even think of a response, her mind racing through possible retorts that wouldn't betray her vulnerability, a deep voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Isabella." Damien had appeared at her side, his presence sudden and commanding, materializing from the crowd like a shadow taking form. His eyes were like chips of ice, cold and unyielding, fixed on Isabella with an intensity that made her falter. "My wife was just telling me she finds all of this rather dull compared to the authenticity of her home. It's a perspective people of substance, as you put it, tend to lose amid their endless games of pretense." He didn't raise his voice, but the rebuke was sharp and clear, slicing through the murmurs like a well-aimed arrow, leaving Isabella's smile frozen on her face, her composure cracking just enough for Elara to notice. He took Elara's arm, his grip firm but not unkind, and steered her away, the crowd parting before them like waves before a ship, leaving Isabella standing there with her champagne glass trembling slightly in her hand. Elara knew it wasn't affection driving him, it was protection of his investment, not his wife, a calculated move to maintain the facade, much like historical patrons defending their alliances for strategic gain. Still, a tiny, foolish part of her felt a spark of gratitude, a fleeting warmth in the chill of the evening, as they moved to a quieter corner where the music's melody softened the edges of the night. The misunderstanding that drove the wedge between them even deeper happened a week later, unfolding like a slow storm on the horizon. Elara was walking in the garden, the paths lined with neatly trimmed hedges that rustled in the breeze, the air scented with blooming roses and fresh earth, a rare sanctuary where she could pretend she was back in her village fields. She saw Damien and Isabella in a heated conversation near the fountain, its water trickling softly like whispered secrets, their body language intense, Isabella's gestures animated, Damien's posture rigid. She couldn't hear what they were saying, the distance muffling their words into indistinct murmurs. But the scene was clear. Isabella was pleading, her hand on Damien's arm in a familiar way, her eyes wide with emotion. He looked conflicted, his usual mask of indifference finally showing a crack, a vulnerability that Elara hadn't seen before, his shoulders tense as if bearing an unseen burden. Then, Isabella reached up and touched his face, her fingers lingering in a gesture that spoke of intimacy long established, perhaps from years of shared history that Elara could never compete with. Elara's heart sank, a cold weight dropping into her stomach, twisting with a pain that was both sharp and dull. Of course, he was in love with Isabella, their connection rooted in the shared world of wealth and privilege, a bond that made Elara's presence feel like an intrusion. Their marriage was just a contract, a temporary hurdle in his life, a means to an end while he waited for something real. She was just a placeholder, the village girl filling a gap until he could return to what truly mattered. The shame and hurt were so sharp she felt sick, a nausea rising as she backed away before they could spot her. Her footsteps hurried on the gravel path, leaves crunching underfoot like broken dreams. She locked herself in her room, the door clicking shut with finality, and for the first time since she arrived, she let herself cry, for the life she'd lost, the simple joys of village sunsets and family laughter now distant memories, for the daily humiliation of being an outsider in this opulent prison, and for the tiny bit of hope that had just been crushed under the weight of reality. Tears streaming down her face as she curled into the armchair, the city lights blurring through her sobs. After that day, she pulled away even more, retreating into her routines like a hermit in a historical cloister, avoiding the main halls and gardens where encounters might occur, her world shrinking to the safety of her wing and the greenhouse. If Damien noticed, he didn't say anything, his own absences growing longer, the mansion's silence deepening like an unspoken agreement. The turning point came when she least expected it, a quiet afternoon in the far end of the property where a small, neglected greenhouse stood like a forgotten relic from a bygone era, its glass panes fogged with dust and vines creeping through cracks like nature reclaiming what was hers. It was dusty and forgotten, the air inside thick with the scent of damp earth and wilted leaves. But Elara had fallen in love with it from the moment she discovered it, hidden behind a copse of oaks that whispered in the wind. It was the only place that reminded her of home, of the feeling of soil under her nails and the simple magic of coaxing life from the earth, much like the humble gardens tended by women in historical villages who found solace in growth amid hardship. She spent hours there, clearing away debris, her hands moving with purpose as she repotted forgotten plants, the rhythm of her work a meditative escape from the mansion's cold grandeur. She was in there one afternoon, humming an old song from her village, a lullaby her mother sang during harvest times, its melody soft and lilting, carrying memories of firelit evenings and shared stories, while repotting a rose bush, her fingers gently pressing soil around fragile roots, the earthy scent grounding her, when the greenhouse door creaked open with a rusty groan that echoed in the humid space. It was Damien. He just stood there for a moment, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, his usual suit replaced by something more casual, as if he'd wandered there on impulse. He'd never seen her like this, not the terrified bride from the wedding, not the awkward accessory at a party, but a woman completely at peace, her hair tied back with a simple ribbon, dirt smudged on her cheeks like badges of quiet defiance. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice softer than she'd ever heard it, lacking the usual edge of command, almost curious as he stepped inside, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Startled, she dropped her trowel, the metal clattering against the stone floor, sending a small puff of dust into the air. I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't be in here. I'll leave," she stammered, wiping her hands on her apron, her heart racing as she bent to retrieve the tool, avoiding his gaze. "I didn't tell you to leave." he said, stepping inside further, his eyes scanning the space with a flicker of recognition. He looked around at the small signs of new life she'd brought back to the forgotten space. The shelves now lined with thriving seedlings, the vines trimmed back to allow sunlight to filter through, the air alive with the promise of growth. My grandmother loved this greenhouse. It hasn't been used in years, not since her passing, when it fell into disrepair like so many things left untended in busy lives. His tone was reflective, a rare glimpse into a personal history that made him seem less like a distant billionaire, and more like a man carrying his own burdens. She watched him, wary but intrigued, her hands stilling on the pot as she straightened up. It has good bones. It just needed some care, a little attention to bring it back, much like the forgotten gardens in old estates, where history whispers through the leaves if you listen closely. Her words were tentative, a bridge extended in the humid air between them. He walked over to her workbench, his movements unhurried, and picked up a small, hand-carved wooden bird, turning it over in his large hands with a gentleness that surprised her, his fingers tracing the rough edges as if feeling the story embedded in the wood. "What is this?" he asked, his voice low, almost reverent. "My brother made it for me," she said quietly, her eyes on the carving, memories flooding back of her siblings' laughter as he whittled it by the fire, the scent of wood shavings mingling with evening stew. "A good luck charm, something to remind me of home amid all this." A wave of homesickness washed over her, tightening her throat, the greenhouse suddenly feeling smaller, the air thicker with unspoken longing. He turned the small object over in his large hands, his touch surprisingly gentle, lingering as if he understood its significance. "You miss them." It wasn't a question, but a statement, delivered with a quiet certainty that caught her off guard, his eyes meeting hers for the first time with something akin to empathy. Tears pricked her eyes, and she looked away, embarrassed, blinking them back as she focused on the rose bush, her fingers trembling slightly in the soil. "Every day, every moment, the sounds, the smells, the simple rhythms that defined my world." Her voice was a whisper, the admission hanging in the air like mist. They stood in a silence that was different from the cold, empty quiet that usually filled the house. It was a shared silence, thick with unspoken things, the only sounds the distant drip of water from a leaky pane and the soft rustle of leaves outside. For the first time, the space between them felt bridgeable, not an insurmountable chasm. "The Gala," he said suddenly, breaking the quiet, his voice pulling her back. "You handled Isabella well, with a grace that belied the situation." She looked up, surprised, her hands pausing in their work. "You defended me, in front of everyone, it was unexpected." "She was insulting my wife," he stated, as if it were a simple fact, his eyes steady on hers. "That is an insult to me, to the arrangement we've made." "Because of the contract," she said, her voice flat, a reminder of the barriers still standing, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw something flicker in his eyes. It looked like frustration, a crack in his composed facade. "Perhaps," he said, his voice clipped, but then he paused, as if weighing his next words. "Or perhaps it's because she was being cruel to someone who has shown nothing but grace under circumstances that are less than ideal, circumstances that echoed the trials of women in history who entered unfamiliar worlds through marriage and emerged stronger." He placed the wooden bird back on the bench, his fingers brushing hers for a split second, the contact like a small electric shock, warm and unexpected, sending a jolt through her that she quickly suppressed. He turned and left without another word, the door creaking shut behind him, leaving Elara alone with her thoughts, the greenhouse air suddenly warmer, the seed of possibility planted in the fertile soil of that brief exchange. It was the first crack in the wall between them. He had seen her. Not the village girl, not the contractual wife, but her, the woman who found joy in growth and quiet rebellion. And in the quiet, dusty greenhouse, a tiny, dangerous seed of hope began to sprout again, its tendrils reaching toward an uncertain light. The thaw that began in the greenhouse was a slow one, unfolding like the gradual bloom of a flower in early spring, tentative and fragile under the watchful eye of the sun. Damien didn't suddenly become a warm, open person. His demeanor remained guarded, shaped by years of isolation in a world where trust was a commodity rarely afforded. But things shifted in subtle ways that Elara noticed like changes in the wind. He started eating dinner in the main dining hall instead of his study. The grand room with its long oak table and crystal chandeliers now lit by candlelight that danced softly on the walls, creating shadows that softened the space's formality. He didn't talk much, his words sparse and measured, but he was there, his presence no longer a threat but a quiet constant, like the steady rhythm of waves on a distant shore. He'd ask about her day, a simple question that felt huge in its normalcy. "How fares the greenhouse?" Or, "What new life have you coaxed from the soil?" Delivered with a nod that invited response without demand. She'd tell him about the greenhouse, about the new life she was nurturing, describing the unfurling leaves of a fern or the first buds on a vine, her voice gaining confidence as she shared these small victories, the conversation stretching longer each evening, laced with pauses where the clink of silverware filled the air. He started to see the woman his mother and Isabella refused to acknowledge, his observations quiet but accumulating like layers of soil building a foundation. He saw her quiet strength in the way she moved through the mansion, had held high despite the whispers. Her kindness to the staff, small acts like thanking the maid for fresh linens or sharing a smile with the gardener, gestures that echoed the communal spirit of historical villages where mutual support was the thread holding communities together, and the fact that she had absolutely no interest in his money, never once glancing at the jewels in the display cases or requesting extravagances. Her simplicity a stark contrast to the opulence around her. She never asked for anything beyond what she could create with her own hands, her whole world revolving around the garden, the library with its shelves of leather-bound tomes on history and botany, and the letters she wrote home, sealing them with wax that carried the faint scent of lavender from her pressed flowers. Her integrity was a steady flame in the cold draft of his world, illuminating corners he had long left in darkness, much like the resilient figures in historical accounts who preserved their moral compasses amid corrupting influences. But this fragile piece, this budding connection that felt like the first green shoots after a long winter, was a direct threat to Beatrice and Isabella. They saw the subtle changes in Damien, the way his eyes would sometimes follow Elara as she crossed the room, a softening in his gaze that hadn't been there before, the rare smile that tugged at his lips during their dinners, and they knew they were losing control, their influence waning like fading empires in historical declines. They needed to cut the bond before it could actually form, to sever it with precision and malice, their alliance forged in shared jealousy and a desire to maintain the status quo. The crisis they created was as brilliant as it was cruel, a plot hatched in whispered conversations in the shadowed corners of the mansion, where alliances were made away from prying eyes. The annual Sterling Foundation dinner was coming up, a private event where the family would unveil its newest multi-million-dollar art purchase, an affair attended by the elite, much like the lavish galas of the Belle Epoque where fortunes were displayed to affirm power. This year, it was a legendary sapphire necklace known as the Star of the Sea, a piece with a storied history, said to have adorned the necks of queens and heiresses through centuries, its deep blue gems catching light like captured ocean waves. For the week leading up to the event, the necklace was kept in a secure vault right there in the mansion, its presence a tantalizing target, the air around it humming with the quiet whir of security systems. 2 days before the dinner, the necklace vanished, the discovery unfolding in a flurry of alarm that rippled through the household like a historical scandal breaking in a royal court. Panic erupted, staff rushing through halls, locks checked and rechecked, the vault's door standing open like a betrayed secret. Security was called, their uniformed figures sweeping the premises with flashlights and stern expressions. The mansion turned upside down in a search that felt invasive and chaotic. Drawers opened, cushions overturned, the air thick with tension and the faint metallic scent of fear. Beatrice, with a look of grave concern etched on her face, made an announcement in the grand foyer, her voice carrying the weight of feigned authority as staff gathered like courtiers awaiting decree. "There's no need to involve the police just yet," she said, her tone trembling with fake sorrow, her hands clasped in a pose of distress. "This is a family matter, one we can resolve internally to protect our name." Her eyes locked on Elara, who stood at the edge of the group, and a cold dread washed over her, a premonition that made her stomach twist, the room suddenly feeling smaller, the chandelier's light harsher. The next part of the plan happened fast, an orchestrated strike that left no room for defense. Isabella found something in Elara's room during a supposed routine check, her entrance unannounced, her steps light but purposeful. Tucked in the drawer where Elara kept her most precious things, letters from home, folded with care and tied with ribbons, the wooden bird resting like a sentinel, was a pawn ticket, its paper crisp and incriminating. It was dated from the day before, from a shady pawn shop downtown, the kind of place hidden in alleyways where desperate souls traded heirlooms for survival, much like the pawnshops in historical slums where the poor pawn their last possessions during economic crises. The description was vague but damning. "One valuable sapphire jewelry item." The words printed in stark black ink that seemed to scream accusation. The accusation was swift and brutal, unfolding in the grand foyer like a public trial, in front of Damien and the senior staff, their faces a mix of shock and discomfort. Beatrice held up the ticket, her hand steady despite the theatrics, waving it like evidence in a courtroom drama. "I had my suspicions," she said, her voice trembling with fake sorrow, tears glistening artfully in her eyes. "I didn't want to believe it. A girl from her background, the temptation must have been too much, the allure of quick money overriding any sense of honor. She was going to sell our family's heritage, a piece that has survived wars and dynasties, for what? A fleeting gain?" Her words painted Elara as the villain, a thief from the lower classes infiltrating the elite, echoing historical prejudices against outsiders in aristocratic circles. Isabella stood beside her, the perfect picture of a disappointed friend, her expression a mask of regret, her gown flowing elegantly as she nodded in agreement. "We tried to help her, Damien. We tried to give her everything, clothes, status, a place in this world. But I guess you just can't erase a person's true nature, the roots that pull them back to baser instincts." Her voice was soft, almost pitying, but her eyes gleamed with triumph, the alliance between her and Beatrice a force of calculated destruction. All eyes turned to Elara, the weight of their stares like physical pressure, pinning her in place. She felt the blood drain from her face, leaving her pale and dizzy, her hands clenching at her sides. "I didn't," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast space. "I would never. I don't know how that got there, someone must have placed it, but why? I've touched nothing of value here." Her mind raced, piecing together the setup, the betrayal stinging like salt in a wound. "Of course you'd say that," Beatrice scoffed, her laugh short and dismissive, echoing off the marble floors. "Thieves are always liars, too, spinning tales to cover their tracks, just as in the old stories of deceit in high society where trust was a luxury few could afford." Elara looked at Damien, her heart pleading with him, her eyes wide with desperation, searching his face for any sign of belief. His face was stone, impassive as granite, the cold man from the wedding day back in full force, his expression giving nothing away, no flicker of doubt or support. This was it. The choice hung in the air like a guillotine blade. He could believe his mother and his childhood friend, women who had been constants in his life, woven into the fabric of his history. Or he could believe the quiet village girl he'd been married to for a few months, the one who preferred dirt under her nails to diamonds on her neck, an outsider whose loyalty was unproven. The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity, the clocks ticking, amplifying in the tension, each second a hammer blow to Elara's hope. She felt it dying inside her, a wilting flower under frost, convinced he would side with blood and familiarity. Then, he moved, his steps deliberate, breaking the stasis. He walked right past his mother, ignoring her expectant gaze, and stopped in front of Elara, close enough that she could see the subtle lines of tension around his eyes. He looked down into her terrified eyes, his own unreadable but steady. "Show me your hands," he said, his voice quiet but firm, cutting through the murmurs like a calm command. Confused, her brow furrowing, she held them out, palms up, the gesture vulnerable in the charged atmosphere. They weren't the soft, manicured hands of a society wife, pampered and idle. They were the hands of a gardener, callous from work, the nails short and practical, with faint traces of soil etched into the lines of her skin like maps of her true self, remnants of her time in the greenhouse clinging stubbornly despite washes. Damien looked at her hands, studying them for a long moment, then looked up at his mother and Isabella, his gaze sweeping over them with a cold finality. His voice, when he finally spoke, was no longer quiet. It was cold, hard, and lethal, each word measured for impact. "This woman," he said, his gaze unwavering, "spends her days in a greenhouse bringing my grandmother's dead plants back to life, tending to them with a care that revives what others have abandoned. She has access to a fortune beyond her wildest dreams, jewels and luxuries at her fingertips, yet the only thing she's ever asked for is a new pair of gardening gloves, simple tools to continue her work. Her most prized possessions are letters from home and a cheap wooden bird carved by her brother, mementos of a life rooted in authenticity. And you expect me to believe she suddenly developed the skills to bypass my state-of-the-art security, steal a world-famous necklace with a history spanning centuries, and fence it at a downtown pawn shop like some common criminal? The idea isn't just absurd. It's insulting to her character and to my intelligence." His words built like a gathering storm, exposing the flaws in their plot with surgical precision. He turned his full attention to Beatrice and Isabella, whose confident smirks had melted into pale shock, their faces draining of color as the truth unraveled. "You set this up. Both of you. You planted that ticket in her room, fabricating evidence to frame her. You have underestimated my wife, dismissing her as weak when her strength is in her quiet endurance, and you have severely underestimated me, thinking I wouldn't see through this petty scheme." His tone was laced with disgust, a rare emotion breaking through his reserve. He pulled out his phone with deliberate calm, tapping the screen as if sealing their fate. "The moment you showed me that ticket, I had security run a check on the pawn shop, discreetly and immediately. Turns out the owner is a known associate of Isabella's cousin, a connection too convenient to be coincidence. I also had them review the security logs for the hallway outside Elara's room, cross-referencing timestamps and access codes. Oddly, there's a 10-minute gap in the footage from yesterday, a gap that can only be created by someone with a master security fob, overriding the system like a thief in the night. Like the one my mother carries, issued to her years ago for family emergencies." He held up the phone, the screen displaying damning logs, the evidence irrefutable. The truth landed with the force of a punch, the air in the foyer thickening as realization dawned. Beatrice turned ghost white, her hands trembling as she clutched her pearls, the facade of control crumbling. Isabella started to stammer, her voice high and desperate. "Damien, that's ridiculous. We were just trying to protect you from someone who doesn't belong, from a mistake that could tarnish everything you've built." "Protect me?" Damien's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper, lethal in its quiet intensity, his eyes narrowing. "You tried to frame an innocent woman, my wife, to satisfy your own pathetic jealousy and greed, to cling to a power that's slipping away. You will leave this house. Both of you. Now. Your access to all sterling accounts, properties, and privileges is revoked, effective immediately. Security will escort you out, and any attempt to return will be met with legal consequences." His authority was absolute, a decree that brooked no argument, echoing the unyielding commands of historical lords banishing traitors from their domains. His security team moved in swiftly, their presence a silent enforcement, guiding the two women out with firm but professional hands, Beatrice's protest fading into echoes down the hall, Isabella's final glance a mix of fury and defeat. Defeated and exposed, their reign of terror finally over, the mansion seemed to exhale, the tension dissipating like mist in the morning sun. In the silence that followed, heavy and profound, Damien turned back to Elara. She was still standing there, trembling, tears of shock and relief streaming down her face, her body shaking from the emotional whirlwind, the release of fear leaving her weak. He reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek, his touch soft, almost tender, a stark contrast to the coldness of before. "I also know where the necklace is," he said softly, his voice a soothing murmur now, free of accusation. "It was never stolen. I moved it to the main vault at Stirling Tower 2 days ago, anticipating something like this. I've known they were plotting for weeks, whispers and inconsistencies adding up like pieces in a puzzle. I was just waiting for them to make their move, to reveal themselves fully." His admission was a revelation, a layer peeled back to show the protector beneath the tycoon. Elara just stared at him, speechless, her mind reeling from the twists, the trust he had placed in her without her knowing. He had known. He had trusted her all along, seeing through the deception when she herself had doubted. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, he found her in the greenhouse, the space now aglow with the soft light of lanterns she had hung, the air warm and alive with the scent of blooming flowers. He walked up to her and held out his hand, palm up. In it was the thick contract she had signed on their wedding day, its pages creased from handling, a symbol of the cold beginning they had endured. "This," he said, his eyes meeting hers with a vulnerability she hadn't seen before, "was a mistake. A cold, unfeeling business transaction, born of necessity but lacking heart. It's not what I want anymore, not after seeing who you truly are." And with that, he tore the contract in half, the paper ripping with a satisfying sound, then in half again, letting the pieces fall to the floor like dead leaves scattering in the wind, symbols of a past discarded. "Elara," he said, his voice now stripped of all its armor, revealing a vulnerability she'd never seen, raw and honest. "Our marriage started as an obligation, a debt to be paid, an arrangement as impersonal as those in historical records where unions were forged for gain. But it's become the most valuable thing in my life, more precious than any empire or jewel. You've shown me a warmth and integrity I thought didn't exist anymore in this world of calculations and facades. You're not a debt. You're my wife. And I." He took a breath, the words hanging in the air like a confession. "I'm falling in love with you, deeply and irrevocably, in ways I never anticipated." The shock of it was more profound than any wedding or accusation, a revelation that washed over her like a gentle wave, filling the empty spaces in her heart. But this time, it was a shock that filled her with a brilliant, soaring warmth, a light that chased away the shadows of doubt. She looked at this powerful man, and saw not the billionaire with his walls of steel, but the man who had seen her, trusted her, and defended her against all odds, his eyes now soft with emotion. "I think," she whispered, a real smile finally reaching her eyes, lighting her face with genuine joy. "I'm falling in love with you too, Damien. In the quiet moments, in the shared silences, it's grown without me even realizing." He closed the space between them, his arms enveloping her in an embrace that felt like coming home, and when he kissed her, it was nothing like the cold formality of their wedding day, devoid of passion or promise. It was warm, and real, and filled with the promise of a future they would build together, not on a foundation of money or contracts, but on the unshakable ground of trust, respect, and a love that had bloomed in the most unexpected of places, like a rare flower thriving in unlikely soil. So what started as a forced, cold union born of desperation, a mere transaction in a world of power and privilege, became a true partnership, a bond forged in the fires of trial and emerging stronger, much like the enduring loves in historical sagas that withstood societal pressures and personal hardships. Elara, the so-called simple village girl, never wanted the power or the money that came with the sterling name, never sought the spotlight or the luxuries that surrounded her like an unasked-for cloak. Instead, she brought something far more valuable to that empty mansion: her quiet strength, a resilience honed in the fields and hardships of her upbringing, echoing the fortitude of women throughout history who turned adversity into quiet triumphs. Her unwavering heart, beating with a compassion that thawed the coldest corners. And her integrity, a light that illuminated the shadows of deceit and entitlement. She walked into a world designed to break her, with its judgments and plots, and came out stronger, not by conquering it with force, but by remaining true to herself, nurturing growth where others saw only barrenness. And Damien, a man encased in the ice of his own privilege, built from years of isolation and calculated decisions, found a warmth in her that melted his defenses, layer by layer, teaching him that the best things in life can't be bought or sold, can't be acquired through deals or dominance. Their journey wasn't a fairy tale where a prince saves a princess, with magical interventions and easy resolutions. It was the story of two people from completely different worlds, who clashed like opposing forces in historical upheavals but found harmony and understanding, who ended up saving each other, each providing what the other lacked: warmth for coldness, simplicity for complexity, trust for suspicion. They proved that the biggest transformations have nothing to do with wealth or status, those fleeting markers of success that history shows can crumble overnight, but everything to do with the courage to trust, to connect on a human level, and to love despite the odds, building something enduring from the ruins of expectation. The unexpected wedding that shocked a few gossips, rippling through society like a scandal in a bygone era, became an unbreakable bond that redefined their entire world, a testament to the quiet power of resilience and the unexpected beauty of genuine connection. If you were moved by Elara and Damien's journey from a cold contract to a love that conquered all, from the depths of misunderstanding to the heights of mutual respect and affection, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another tale of transformation and triumph. We share new stories of love, resilience, and unexpected journeys every week, drawing from historical inspirations to bring you relaxing narratives that soothe the mind and warm the heart, perfect for unwinding at the end of your day. Drop a comment below. Did Elara's quiet strength resonate with you, or was it Damien's hidden vulnerability that captured your imagination? Share your thoughts, your own stories of unexpected turns, or even suggestions for future videos, and let's build a community of sleepyheads who find solace in these tales. And if this story helped you drift off or inspired a moment of reflection, give it a thumbs up. It helps us reach more dreamers like you. Sweet dreams, and we'll see you in the next one.